Greg Boyle, founder of Homeboy Industries. He's not only built the most celebrated gang intervention and rehabilitation program in the world with counseling, schooling, job training, he's also built thriving businesses that today employ the very gang members and formerly incarcerated who once turned to Homeboy to turn their lives around. The success stories are endless.
If it wasn't for Homeboy Industries, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be where I'm at in my life. I wouldn't be the father that I am today.
People are gonna make mistakes, right? It's good to know that, you know what, the door is never closed. No matter how down you are, there's a door that is always open.
Homeboy Industries was the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Father G says he didn't set out to build Homeboy with a plan. It evolved as there was little support for those on the margins. They were considered throwaway kids, a community often demonized. When he couldn't get schools to take these kids, he built a program for them. When he couldn't get them jobs, he created them. Despite his immense humility, Father G, as he's called, has received the highest accolades, among them the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But clearly, it's not what drives him. What does, he says, is a deep call for empathy, especially now with troops on the streets of LA, ICE raids terrorizing many in his communities. He's calling for radical tenderness toward others.
We stand with them. We will never abandon you, ever.
For him, it's not political. It's about seeing ourselves in the other, using his platform to preach compassion in complex times.
We want to see people as God does, with the highest, deepest reverence.
Father Greg Boyle, he is today's LA Story. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a really special edition of LA Stories. I'm Giselle Fernandez, and we are here in downtown LA at Homeboy Industries with a man who has transformed countless lives. Father G, what an honor to sit with you on LA Stories.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
You've won so many accolades for what you've built, but you just won the Presidential Medal of Freedom, highest civilian honor for the immense contributions you've made. What did that mean to you?
Well, when I got it, a homie texted me and he said, hey, I just heard that you got a presidential pardon or something. I said, well, yeah, something like that.
Was it meaningful for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, it was kind of as much as those things mean, you know.
It's not why you do it.
Yeah, it was just surreal.
When you think of what you've built, what were the biggest obstacles?
The first 10 years, there was so much hostility because you remember, you know, how demonized the gang population was, and it was just large. So we got bomb threats, hate mail, death threats for 10 solid years. And so that was the main obstacle, because how are you going to get people to fund you if they're demonizing, you know, the people you walk with?
From the very beginning, you walked into these streets with this sense of compassion, see ourselves in the other.
I was a pastor of a very poor parish in the housing projects with 8 gangs. So it was really a pastoral thing. It's like I'm responding to what's happening. In 1988, first time I buried a kid killed because of gang violence.
Enough is enough.
Then we started to have shootings morning, noon, and night. You had junior high age gang members who had been given the boot from their home school. Nobody wanted them. So where are they going? They're in the projects in the middle of the day selling drugs, violent, writing on walls. So that's when I walked out to them and said, if I found a school that would take you, would you go? And every single one, there was no exception, every single one said, yeah, I would go. And then I couldn't find a school. So then we started one. Try to find employers willing to hire them. There weren't enough, so we created maintenance crews and landscaping crews and all that kind of stuff. We have 14 social enterprises, and that's kind of how that all began.
I've heard you speak several times, and one of the things you say that really hits me in my heart is when you say, if we could stand in the shoes of some of these homies for one day, you'd stand in awe and not in judgment of all they've had to endure and survive and still stand upright.
Yeah, well, definitely, you know, because all of them have carried more than I've ever had to carry, and I grew up in the same city as they did. But you're noticing that no hopeful kid has ever joined a gang in the history of the world. So the issue is not how do we change behavior, but how do you infuse hope to kids for whom hope is foreign? So that's a whole different thing. That's That's understanding that the gang violence is about something else. So if you can address, well, what's it about then? Address that thing, the healing that needs to happen. So the culture heals, the community heals, all hands on deck. Everybody's providing a dose of kindness and tenderness that in a way works on you cumulatively, where people go, wow, I'm a person with dignity and nobility, and this place has pulled the favor out of me so that I feel favorable. And then that produces a sturdy person who is resilient.
Is there anyone that cannot be saved or rehabilitated?
No, definitely, I don't believe in bad people at all. You know, I'd have probation officers say, don't even bother with that guy. He is pure evil. That was a quote, which intrigued me because it made me kind of think, well, who is this guy? And then, you know, that guy ended up becoming, you know, won our big Homeboy Hero Award and a father of 2 and doing well. So, you know, I knew that that was wrong. It's really about health. How do we walk each other home to wholeness and wellness, and that none of us are well until all of us are well.
Your model has been replicated not just in other cities across America, but overseas. I mean, what does that mean to you?
Well, it's scalability, but we didn't want to become the McDonald's of gang intervention programs.
Yeah.
So it's a model of a communal place where people feel safe, seen, and cherished. You can apply that model to any complex social dilemma.
Yeah, we live in very complex times.
Yeah.
Your whole vision and call for extravagant tenderness or kindness in this climate, at least politically, can be seen as weakness and not strength.
No healthy adult thinks that tenderness and compassion is weak. There are a lot of unhealthy folks, and some of them running our country, who think that's weakness, but that's just because they're not fully whole or really well. Because if you are, then you go, oh, of course, that's the only strength there is kindness. You know, that's the only thing that actually changes hearts.
What have you learned most about how we can somehow transcend the obstacles, the challenges, the hatred, the lack of forgiveness? What have you learned from the homies?
Everything of value they've taught me, that we're allergic to holding the bar up and asking the homies to measure up. Instead, we hold the mirror up and we say, here's the truth of who you are. You're exactly what God had in mind. And then once people are seeing that truth, they become that truth, they inhabit that truth. And that's a powerful way to be in the world. Well, the homies taught me that. You know, we're not trying to create a community of behaving people, but a community of cherished belonging. But if you can address the despair, you know, if you can address, you know, the healing of their own trauma, because if they don't transform their pain, they're going to transmit it and keep doing that.
The narrative against immigrants, certainly Los Angeles, a sanctuary city. I know these are things you care deeply about. How is Homeboy Industries? How are you responding to this moment and this narrative that is taking hold about LA?
Yeah, it's horrible. How do we address in real time, in a real way, the anxiety that everybody feels, mainly because of the color of their skin? Even if they were born here, or even if their papers are perfectly fine, they know the climate. They know how people are being rounded up, and they see it.
What do you tell them?
Stay anchored in the truth and in the power of, you know, the fact that we belong to each other, we're connected, we will not abandon you, period. There's a train of thought out there in a position that says that somehow Los Angeles is in the midst of a migrant invasion. Well, nobody who lives here thinks that's true. But also they will talk about a crime wave. Nobody in the country thinks that's true. So you want to stay anchored in the truth.
When you think of, you know, Christian values and what's happening with these policies, how do you reconcile that?
You know, Jesus wouldn't recognize himself or his followers in mass deportations. You just can't do it. Mass deportations and living the gospel. So Jesus took 4 things seriously, only 4: inclusion, nonviolence, unconditional loving kindness, compassionate acceptance. So the current narrative in the regime at the moment is about exclusion. How do we keep people out? It advocates violence at every turn and has language and rhetoric that's entirely violent. It's about conditions on our love as opposed to how our God sees loving unconditionally. And it's about rejection of people, from trans to the immigrant population. It's just wholesale rejection. So none of these things can be reconciled. So I don't seek to reconcile them except to say that they can't be reconciled.
When you're exposed to all the violence and the pain and the trauma so many in the community face, do you lose faith?
No, never. I never have, really. God protects me from nothing, but sustains me in everything. So the sustenance I've always felt, no matter what. But, you know, it's like the mother who's grieving, why did God take my son? I go, no, some pobrecito with a gun took your son. But God's rooting for us. God's hoping that we'll put the guns down.
Well, we're going to get into these very challenging times and dive into some of your vision for radical tenderness and forgiveness of everything when LA Stories comes right back. Welcome back to LA Stories, everyone. We're here with the legend, Father G of Homeboy Industries. In light of the ICE raids and these mass deportations that are only going to be escalating, what is your message to those who feel so deeply afraid right now that they don't want to go to work, they don't want to go into their churches or their schools because they don't feel safe anymore?
You know, we're strong together, so we need to lock arms around this community, and we need to say, we will not abandon you. ICE should remove itself from Los Angeles, you know. We don't need you here. We really don't. There is no crime wave or invasion. We don't need you here.
He wasn't resisting at all. He's not resisting.
We do all we can to protect people because this is about the sanctity of families being split up, and fathers won't return home or mothers will never see their children again. This is the worst.
What is the impact, not just on the families, but on our society as a whole?
At Homeboy, we have two overriding principles that we embrace. One is everybody's unshakably good, no exceptions. And we belong to each other, no exceptions. Do I think that every complex social dilemma would dissipate if we embrace those two principles? Yes, I do. You can draw a straight line from why we don't make progress with one thing or another. And it's because we don't fully believe that everybody's unshakably good and we belong to each other. Nobody can align the energies of God with mass deportation. It's not possible. No one can say, this is what the God of love hopes we will do as a country. No one is going to be able to say that.
But the political leaders in power right now will say that these people broke the law, they shouldn't be here. They campaigned on this and they're just now executing on their campaign promises. Many Latinos voted for this administration.
I think so many people voted against their interests. This is not a political statement. You know, it's not like stupid people are doing this or bad people are doing this, but can you be healthy and vote so entirely against your own interests? You can't justify any of it, you know, and nobody healthy does. Nobody healthy says, this is what we should be doing, sending back people who've lived here for a quarter of a century or half a century. Before you call, not you, but anybody, before you call the president evil, I would just put this challenge out. Make the case that he's healthy. I'll wait. You know, nobody will be able to do that. They just won't. None of that is a moral judgment or he's a bad man, because I don't believe in any of that stuff. But it's important to kind of assess. A healthy person is a trusting person. A healthy person doesn't call people names. A healthy person is kind. This isn't about holiness. There is no difference between holiness and health. There isn't. Healthy people love. Holy people love. It's the same thing. It's absolutely interchangeable.
What could society outside, you know, the hood learn from you that would make us healthier?
Well, you know, I think we have to imagine a circle of compassion and then imagine nobody standing outside that circle. So we need to dismantle the barriers that exclude. I think if we embrace the things that mattered to Jesus, from inclusion and nonviolence and unconditional loving kindness imagine, and compassionate acceptance.
What do you say to those who go, we can't afford all these undocumented immigrants here. We can't afford to just let everybody in. We just can't sustain it anymore.
Nobody's saying let everybody in. You regulate it, you reform it. They tried to reform it. They had a bipartisan bill, let's reform it. And the current president said, don't reform it because I want to have a scapegoat, an enemy. I want to be able to point at a migrant crime wave that doesn't exist. But if they say it's not realistic, it's just because, love never fails. And if people feel like it has, it just means we haven't tried it.
Do you ever get discouraged, given what's happening right now in the country?
No, I don't do discouragement. I don't do disappointment. You go to the margins and you delight in the people you find there. Then I'm eternally replenished. I'm not, oh my God, it was 2 steps forward and 5 steps backwards. No, loving is your true self. Loving is your home. Once you know that, you're never homesick, ever.
You're always at home with yourself.
Always. You're never homesick. You're never longing for some other greener pasture.
If we could all get there. All right, we're going to take a break right there, but we'll come back with more with Father G when LA Stories comes right back. Welcome back to LA Stories, everyone. We're here with Father Greg Boyle of Homeboy Industries. When you think of Homeboy Bakeries and the silk shop and the tattoo removal, and you have a venture fund, is that right? And housing, when you think of everything you've been able to build, and what are you most proud of?
Oh, that's another thing I don't do. I don't do pride. People always ask me that, or I just don't do it. You can't afford it,
Does it surprise you? How successful it's been?
Well, again, I don't do success either. Because, Mother Teresa said we're not called to be successful, we're called to be faithful. So I think that's the truth. Because what happens if that's your engine, then you're only going to work with the most likely to succeed, and I'm not interested. I'm interested in people who walk in who are really belligerent and difficult, and that's okay. And it may take 4 tries, which happens often. The homies who run the place now, some of them took 3, 4 times. And I'd ask, I go, well, why was this hard for you to kind of stay? And they'd always say things about, I couldn't handle the love. They couldn't figure out what this was. And then they'd go back to getting high or violence or going back to prison.
Who were your mentors?
The homies are kind of my mentors throughout. I admire Gandhi, and Cesar Chavez was a friend, I knew him. All the usual suspects, Nelson Mandela and Dorothy Day. But the real mentors are on the ground with you every day, and it's really right here. You're going to get the mentoring from the folks at the margins.
You have also done all of this over the decades while battling your own health issues, leukemia, and you have said that diagnosis really kind of informed your faith. In what way? I
wouldn't trade that time for anything, It's like today is the most important day ever, because it could be your last. And then you feel very alive and delighting in the present moment. And then you can breathe in the spirit that delights in your being, and then you can breathe that spirit out into the world, because the world could use it.
What is your message to the city of Los Angeles right now?
Yeah, I just think locking arms. We're in this together. We are in solidarity with the folks on the margins and the poor and the powerless and the voiceless, and we're going to stand with the demonized until the demonizing stops, and with the disposable until the day comes when we stop throwing people away. But if we're locked armed in that, then who's going to be able to stop us? National Guard? Are you kidding me? Marines? Oh no, you're gonna have to send in a lot more. Please don't. But it's like, this is an unstoppable movement, because the movement is good and true and right and just. And because it is, you can lock arms and feel good about it. You can say, is this political? Not even a little bit. This is gospel. This is the God of love. This is aligning our hearts with the energies of God. Is there any doubt? No, there's no doubt about that. That's exactly what this is.
Well, you infuse in me and in so many so much hope, and we all want to practice extravagant tenderness, compassion, forgiveness. Father Greg Boyle, thank you so much for sitting with us on
Thank you,
LA
Giselle. I
Stories.
appreciate
Really
it.
good
Always
to see
a
you.
privilege.
Oh, my privilege.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching another edition of LA Stories. I'm Giselle Fernandez. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your communities, click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV for the latest information, balanced coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.